Do Canadians have better UFO sightings? Let's go ahead, dive in, and find out. When it comes to trying to find information, it's near impossible to find just one source or one place that has all the information. You have witnesses and experiencers reporting things to only certain people or not reporting at all. So it's impossible to have all the exact numbers. But I will go through some cases and what I've been able to find thanks to others before me that have put in the work and, asked for the FOIA requests and that kind of thing and are setting up some databases. MUFON does have a Canadian organization. However, I haven't been able to find anywhere where they actually post the results or anything like that. So from what I gather, they keep everything pretty tightly sealed. So like I said, let's go ahead, dive in a little bit. Even on Wikipedia, which all things considered, probably not the best source of information, especially nowadays, but they do have just a quick list of some of the top UFO sightings in Canada and a quick breakdown. And these are short and sweet, so you can, of course, take these and dive into them a little bit more. So starting with the first one here, 1951, Gander, Newfoundland, a U.S. Navy aircraft flying to Iceland from Gander reported a near collision with a large orange circular UFO that almost literally flew circles around the American aircraft. 1960, Clan Lake, Northwest Territories. On June 18th, 1960, a prospector told the Yellowknife RCMP detachment that a month earlier, he and his partner saw a UFO at Clan Lake, located 30 miles north of Yellowknife. According to ufologist Chris Rutkowski, the men claimed they saw a hovering object 4 to 6 feet wide. It hit the surface of the lake. The RCMP investigated and found nothing. One of the more well-known ones was this one here, 1967, Falcon Lake, Manitoba. Stefan Michalak, hopefully I'm pronouncing that properly, claimed he was burned by one of 2 flying saucers that he reportedly came into contact with May 19th, 1967, near Falcon Lake. Ufologists claim that images of Michalak in the hospital show a grid of burn marks on his chest, and these pictures you can find pretty easily online. And a similar grid appears burned into his t-shirt. Ufologists consider this to be one of the most documented UFO stories in Canada. There's been a couple of books released on this as well. And every good story, of course, you're going to have the skeptics come out. The only people that know what happened are those involved. So we either have to trust what they say or believe they completely fabricated everything for some reason. To sell a few books, it doesn't really make much sense because unless you are writing for the masses of the world, you're not going to be making millions of dollars through selling books. Anyway, so of course, the skeptic says that he was likely burned because he was drunk and he was prospecting for silver ore near the lake and just wanted to make up a story to keep other prospectors out of the area. And it's funny because, okay, fine, you want to keep prospectors out of the area, but if you're telling these UFO stories, you're going to get a whole lot of people coming to that area anyways. So it's not like he'd really be beating out the competition, so to speak, to scare them away. But anyway, skeptics are everywhere, regardless if there's proof or not. It's their job to keep the status quo and deny everything. So this one's interesting. Like I mentioned, the only one who knows the absolute truth is Michalak, who was there. Then it says here in 2018, the Royal Canadian Mint released a $20 silver coin depicting the alleged event as one of its first in its Canadian Unexplained Phenomena series of coins. So that's really interesting there. Another major one was this one here, 1967 as well, in Shag Harbor. And a lot of the witnesses thought that it was an airplane that was crashing. So police, civilians, military, a lot of witnesses on this one. They saw this happen, so they're all rushing to the water to check it out and see what crashed and how they can help, realizing there's no debris. These lights seem to have come down to the water and sort of skimmed across the water and were just going about their business. There was no crash, no evidence ever found. And through the reports and just the mass amount of witnesses, that it was undeniable that something happened in Shag Harbor there in 1967. And then this actually became the second coin in the Canada Unexplained Phenomena series. So those are some of the more well-known ones. I'll leave a link to this and you can read through these. Like I said, these are some of the top ones that have happened. And the other thing I wanted to show was this document here I found on the Internet Archive. It's 8,000 pages of declassified Canadian UFO documents. So this is pretty intense. And you can see here on this one, just as an example, as I was reading through it, a lot of redacted information. But the gist of some of these stories are here. And of course, you can read through these I'm sure some can be explained, some not, but it's just sort of weird encounters that some pilots have seen. So you can see here 169 pages, and each one is about 300 pages or so that you can go through. Some you can read, some you can't, just with the quality of the scans. So it's really interesting. If you want to take the time to go through 8,000 documents, by all means, it's there for you. So again, everything will be linked below. And this is where the research job gets easier because there's always someone doing the research before you. So Vice World News was actually given 300 pages of documents through the Freedom of Information requests from the Canadian government. So they've got 20 years of UFO sightings that they've gone through. So they say there's 500 plus reports in nearly 300 pages, and they've compiled some of the top ones. So you can read the whole article here. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but at the bottom, they've got 290 pages. And somewhere in the article there, they have a link to their top best UFO report. So they've narrowed that down to 10 that they want to report on. And you can read through this PDF as well. It gives a breakdown of these reports. Vice also has another article that's saying that unclassified intelligence reports link the Royal Canadian Air Force, NORAD, Transport Canada, and air traffic controllers in an official confirmation of a Canadian UFO alert system. So they were or are all working together to document UFO sightings. And this is really interesting because Canada has been super quiet with what's been going on in the US, which is why I wanted to dive into this, because they must be keeping their lips sealed for a specific reason. Maybe it's not so much to draw attention to them because they're way more heavily involved than we think, or they just want to keep quiet because what's the point of stirring this sort of stuff up when they can keep it all under control and keep all the facts in their hands. Really hard to say what the motivation is, but if you saw my other video, there will be some sort of report coming out end of summer, early fall of 2024. And in that video, I mentioned they say they don't want to prove extraterrestrial life or not. My worry is it's just going to be another Arrow report where they say, yeah, nothing to see here. Meanwhile, in the background, they ignored or refused to look at any serious matters. So if you don't look at it, then you don't have to report on it, right? Or if you're told it, you say, I don't believe that, and then you don't have to report on it. So I think that's kind of what might be happening. So it'll be interesting, but I don't have my hopes up. So Vice, another great article you can read there as well. And even the Canadian Encyclopedia has a really good article that they released in 2020. And they're saying how just for 45 years, they were investigating UFOs and they stopped in 1995. I don't necessarily believe that. Just like anything, things change, names change. They can say, yeah, this program stopped. They don't say that another one started or anything like that. But it's funny because they say here, from the start, they were reluctant to study this topic. It devoted a few resources, not many. And they're just saying, yeah, all UFOs are natural phenomena or the products of delusional minds. And this was sort of the mindset at the time and still sort of is. Consciousness is changing. We know that. We can feel it. And which is why more of this is coming to light. But this mindset here is why most people didn't report it. If you're a professional commercial airline pilot, you're not going to report this to have to go through a psychiatric evaluation or potentially lose your job just because you actually saw something and wanted to report it. So what do? They keep their mouth shut. And finally, that is starting to change. So anyways, another great article here. The problem with these links, though, they just link back to other articles on the Canadian Encyclopedia. So I dug into some of the information that they posted here. And one of those is the Canadian UFO survey. So they've got some good information. The website, not the greatest, hard to navigate and not the prettiest, but hey, it's better than nothing. So I spent some time going through this website and I found this report here, the results of the 2023 Canadian UFO survey. So despite what the website looks like, this is one of the best resources that I've found. And so these reports, they call them survey essays. You can read all of the reports and they've got everything from 2023 all the way down to 1990. That is a lot of data. Looking at their 2023 release, they've got a lot of information. It's 31 pages. And I like this. Call them what you want, UFOs or UAPs. It doesn't matter. It's all the same thing, right? Sort of this rebranding. But they are being reported continuously. In 2023, 570 UFO reports were officially filed in Canada with official government agencies, participating private organizations, media, and social media. So they go through all of these things and populate it into this survey or this essay to give us this report. So on average, about 50 UFO sightings were reported each month in Canada. Remember, these are reports. How many people aren't reporting? So that's the outlier in a lot of this. And out of those, about 6% were considered unexplained. And those are the ones we're interested in. It goes without saying that the provinces with larger populations tend to have the most reports. Of course, you're going to have more people to report these things. There was monthly peaks reported in February and August. 45% of cases they determined were lights in the sky, known as nocturnal lights. And the most common shape of UFO reported in 2023 was a simple point source of light. That's 45%. And more than 24,000 Canadian UFO reports have been cataloged during the past 34 years. So some really interesting quick stats there. And so they break it down even more. So we've got cases by month. You can see here, February, August saw the most action or activity. You've got UFO reports by type. So this is really interesting. There's a high amount of DD, which stands for daylight disk, an unknown object observed during daytime hours. ND, nocturnal disk, a light source in night sky that appears to have a definite shape. NL, nocturnal lights, light source in the sky. And so you can continue going through those. It breaks it down by province, and you can see the highest reports are Ontario and Quebec. So Ontario had 23.3%, BC 11.9%, Quebec 33.3%, Alberta greatly underrepresented with only 6.3%. That's interesting because I hear that Alberta is UFO hotspot aside from Quebec and Ontario, right? So are they just not reporting them, or is there something else to it? And they do mention they think this irregular distribution is explained to a large degree because Quebec and Nova Scotia, they both have civilian UFO groups with very active public awareness campaigns and thus receive substantial media and social media attention. So it's not necessarily that there's more UFOs in those areas. It's just there's a lot more active people watching and reporting. And as far as cities, the most were in Montreal, Toronto, and London. Colors of UFOs are all broken down there. Number of witnesses per case. So there's 31 pages to this. And at the end, they have some of their most high quality reports for the year. And like always, this is where I wish more information was given after the fact, right? So they're saying a pilot was standing on the ground and he saw an unidentified flying object in the air. It was approximately 1,000 feet above ground, west of the pilot, heading northeast to southwest. The pilot estimates the object was roughly 10 to 20 feet in diameter, sphere-shaped, either white or light gray, and they notified their Toronto Area Control Center shift manager. Would love a follow-up to hear about that. This one's neat. Again, it happened in March, this time in Winnipeg. So this amateur astronomer likes to sketch objects, and he was sketching the sun that day, and they saw this odd object cross the disk of my sun. I added the object to my sketch as it appeared in my field of view. It was a hexagon, just that, plain and simple, traveling from west to east, and it took 3 seconds to get across from limb to limb. It was slow moving. And that's the sketch there. Now you could say, well, could be anything. Of course, anyone could sketch this and tell a story, but why? What's the point of reporting it? I don't think anyone's life has gotten easier by reporting these types of incidences. Now, is getting easier? Yes, maybe that's part of it, but that one is really interesting. Here's another one from Quebec. Again, in March, 2 witnesses observed and filmed a large unidentified flying object approximately 40 meters diameter, which circulated very slowly at approximately 80 meters altitude above their house. There was a red light at what appeared to be the bow, an intense white light on the starboard side, and a series of lights at the stern. The sound was not that of a plane or a helicopter, but possibly an airship, as they say. And there's a link there. You can actually watch the video on YouTube, so I'll just play that for you. So pretty interesting. Now, of course, it's cell phone video at night. It's near impossible to tell what it actually is. So we have to trust that the account and the images they drew to represent what they saw is actually what they saw, because it doesn't always fully show up in video. And one of the more popular sightings is the huge black triangles. This was also seen in Quebec, and here's a sketch they drew. So very similar to the TR3B and those types of crafts that you'll hear others talk about. JP, Dr. Michael Sala, Dr. Greer, and a lot of other stories worldwide of these flying triangles. Now, who's in control? Whose crafts are these? We don't know. That's the second question. And I don't think there's one single answer in such a vast universe with infinite possibilities. Could be our stuff, could be someone else's. Pretty much what it comes down to. We just don't know who it is at the time, and it could be something or someone else every single time. So dive into these, have a read through, and you can also go straight to the Government of Canada site to check out the library and archives. I just typed in unidentified flying object, and it pulled up 4,933 results. Some of these really won't be relevant because it's checking all the keywords, but there's a lot of information in there as well. So does Canada have the best UFO reporting? From what I see here, there's a lot of data, a lot of information that we can go through, and I hope someone can dive deep into this and consolidate it a little bit more. It's wonderful the Canadian UFO Survey has their own research body and their own reporting system. That's fantastic. I think that's as good as we're going to get, at least to make it a little easier for us who just want the information without going through 8,000 or 5,000 documents. And thank you so much for watching. Canada, we really got to step it up into this UAP, UFO phenomena reporting, and move on from this 100 years of cover-up. Links to all of these will be in the description below. Have a read through them, have a look, and enjoy. Until next time, take care.